Yo, Parish Orphans and Retrogrades. Special episode for you today with a very special guest. After a very, very viral video, my friend, Mr. Andrew Dunkin Donuts Wilson, joins from the Crucible, a very successful streamer and a guy I've done 2x2 debates with, and a comrade, brother at arms against the worldwide globo-fem idiots. Andrew Wilson, how in the heck are you, brother?
Doing well.
Looking well.
Very well. Yeah. Well, so if you're wondering about the Grizzly Adams beard and the lack of a haircut, so I made a deal with myself that I'm not going to shave or get a haircut until I'm at least in somewhat decent shape, right? So I've been working really hard towards that. And the beard, the Grizzly Adams beard and the haircut is a consistent reminder of how much of a failure I am every single time I look at it, and it's a little bit bigger and bushier than it was the day before. So, but I'm trying. Yeah,
that's an opposite metric for a lot. A lot of dudes want to be able to grow a beard. I can't. I've never really particularly wanted one, but I guess you have a similar system to James Harden, the beard in the NBA. He won't cut his big nasty beard until he wins a championship, and it looks like he's never going to get one. So I hope you get there, my friend.
I'll get there.
You'll get the chip.
Yeah, I'll get there.
Good on you. It's becoming on you, and of course I'm anti haircut anyway as a long hair. So. Bro,
I think you got to compromise on the facial hair, though, right?
Yeah, that's true. Because I'm clean shaven. That's just by genetic necessity or whatever it is.
Yeah, otherwise, you look goofy.
Yeah, well, I'd just be patchy as hell if I had stuff there.
Yeah, that's no bueno.
Look, man, your channel has blown the holy cows, the holy lug nuts up. That's phenomenal. The Crucible is rolling.
Yeah, we're doing really well. We have been for a couple of years. A lot of people don't know, but so the way that the online sphere works, it's actually way bigger than people think. And what happens is people find niches and they stay in those niches. So they think that everything in the online sphere revolves around their whatever their little niche is, right? There's not very many creators actually. There's actually tens of thousands, right? Surprisingly, there are people inside. So I will debate inside the manosphere. I'll also debate politics. And I also will debate religious political prompts, things like this. It's interesting to me how disconnected all of these spheres are from each other, though, right? So manosphere has no idea about apologetic sphere and this type of thing. And we were already doing extraordinarily well inside of the mainstream even a couple of years ago. We just started blowing up in other sectors, right? And so it's because the reason the Crucible was so successful is because we engage with multiple internet sectors, not just a single sector, because we think our message is palatable across many different sections and ideologies.
That's exactly what you are. And kind of like Jay Dyer does this really well. He's a mutual friend of ours. I also do the same thing. Three or four sort of conceptually connected spaces that are technologically maybe gigabitically not as connected as they should be. And you seem to have figured out, I'm so happy about it, how to make the conceptual connection a gigabyte connection. That's really good.
I knew inside of the manosphere that because of the rampant degeneracy which was going on there, and the amount of pickup artists and the amount of other people who had come in and begun to pollute, dilute, and destroy the message of the primary message, which was men's rights and men's advocacy, that this was ripe for Christians to begin to go in, wreck the degenerate portion, and get people back on the rights, the men's rights perspective of this thing. And that's exactly what's happened. Christians have begun to re-engage vigorously inside of that sphere with a superior message than what the degenerates in that sphere had, and are beginning to push them out. And the Crucible, I would say, has pioneered that a little bit with leading the battle charge into that sphere, with many now much larger Christian content creators taking notice and beginning to engage finally in the men's rights question.
Absolutely. Yeah. The pickup artist degeneracy angle is dying. It's dying fast. And I announced the case for patriarchy 4 years ago, almost, and we became friends sometime shortly after that. And then, what was it? 2023 happened when Pearl Davis came out and was kind of representing some iteration of a conglomerate, kind of a Reader's Digest of the red pill and PUA space. I don't know how you'd want to characterize that. People get sensitive about the characterization there, but I think that's it. It's sort of a digest that she offered from a girl's perspective. And, then it was off and running. And it is a marketplace of ideas on the internet still, even if it's not on network TV because it's all gate kept. The internet is a marketplace of ideas. And, stuff in 2024 was mainly given over to the so-called J question. 23 was this, if I had to characterize, 2023 was the woman question as represented by the old guard, the pickup artist, semi-degenerate space. 2025, I know you've been doing well since before that, but 2025, I'm starting to see all kinds of big accounts saying, hey, read The Case for Patriarchy by Tim Gordon. So the Christian solution is the final solution, and it's bound to preponderate.
I mean, it's going to win, but I'll explain why I think it will. I think you have the right take here. When I started engaging with the red pill community, I always try to be very good faith about another person's ideology. And the reason is because I want to fucking destroy it. And you can't unless you understand it. You can't. It can't be done, right? They'll just say you're straw manning, and they're right? You're just straw manning, and you're building up an effigy in which to attack, and this and that. Here's the problem that comes up, though. It's like, what happens when you listen in good faith and then go, oh shit, they're right. Right?
I know.
Oh shit, they're right. So what the red pill actually is it's a descriptor. It's a set of descriptors. It's a data packet, nothing more than a data packet. Now you can hand this data packet to, let's say you have 4 men in a room. One's a degenerate. You hand him that data packet, right? You're handing him Excalibur. Now he uses that and goes, man, I can use this to psychologically manipulate, fuck a bunch of chicks, and also manipulate the men who are around me into sending me loads of casholes. And so I could teach them the same thing, right? How to do the daily degen dance. You can give it to the second man who's a progressive, and they can use it as now an incel hunter's guide, right? Now it's an incel hunting extravaganza where you're going to load up the rifles and hunt the incel like two-legged deer, blaming all problems on them. The third guy who he picks up the data packet, he's a Muslim, right? And what the Muslims do is they use it as a reinforcement for why socially they should be in charge of society, because after all, female psychology is so bad, according to their descriptors of this packet, that men basically need to wrap them in shufas and tell them to shut their fucking mouths, right?
And right.
But then you hand it to Christians, and something bizarre happens. Every descriptor which is in there has already had a prescription written for it 2,000 years ago. So the descriptors of, well, men prefer virgins. It's like, well, wait a second. We have a prescription for this, right? We have a prescription for this. Well, women prefer tall, strong, masculine men. Wait a second. We have a prescription for this. Well, wait a second. Women prefer strong leadership and patriarchy, where also they're valued as being matrons in society, right? Where they have social duties, right? But we can tell there's some sort of distinction between them ontologically. Wait a second, right? And you see this matchup happen where we can take what Rollo Tomassi would refer to as a praxeology, I just refer to as a data packet. You go, look, reconciling this with the aughts. We have the descriptors, that's great, but we have the aughts. We have the what you can do with them for the virtuous and noble life that men want to lead.
Yeah, there was a Wall Street Journal article that came out mid-March, I think a month ago today. It was a month ago today. It was March 14th, which is my birthday. And it mentioned me as leading the patriarchy movement. And it was a Catholic feminist, there are too many of them, named Erica Bakioki. She mentioned also my friend Mike Pentile, and he was quoting any red pillar as being 90% more correct, even the degenerate ones, than even otherwise rule-following Catholic feminists. And they wanted to know, am I on board with that? I'm like, oh yeah. When we're diagnosing the problem, which is the easy part, I would say any red pill advocate is 99.9% more correct than any feminist, even a Catholic or a Christian or Orthodox or a Protestant feminist. But the hard part, when you have, now that we're like middle-aged guys, you get these chronic pains. The hard part's getting rid of it. And the diagnosis is what's really the desideratum that people are after, right? People don't fucking care if okay, you said you have a headache, right? Now, conservative feminists like Megyn Kelly, they can't figure it out. They can't even tell that they have a headache. But yeah, hell yeah, the red pill accurately diagnoses 99%, 100% better than even Christians who are willing to throw in their lot with feminists. But only someone that's
well, I mean, I completely not only agree with this take, but I would take it a step further and say that it's not even logically possible. So I don't even think it's in the realm of logical possibility to be a feminist and a Christian. And the reason I don't think so is because take a look at Catholicism. You would consider the Catholic Church to be the one true apostolic church of Christ, right? That's what you consider it to be. The Pope has to be a man.
Right.
Okay. It's a patriarchal top-down religion. Women cannot be priests. They cannot be bishops. They cannot do any of these things inside of the Catholic Church. Completely not allowed, because it's not only a patristic but patriarchal faith. So, and it relies on patrilineal lineage, right? So it's patrilineal. It's all from the father. All of it's from the father. It's all patriarchy. So if you say that you're a feminist Catholic, you are giving a self-repudiation. I think it's a direct contradiction.
No, it is
a direct contradiction.
Trust me, the case for patriarchy took almost 2 years to come out because it was so controversial, and it was a ballsy Catholic publisher that ended up coming out, but lots of drama in between. I think some of it. A lot of it was family drama. Some of it was quite unfortunate. But the initial title of the book was No Christian Feminism, meaning if you try to be any kind of Christian, especially a Catholic, because we have Papa at the top of the pyramidal hierarchy, but any type of Christian, you are a circular square, a self-contradiction, a contradiction in terms. And the scripture makes this true even for Protestants, but for Orthodox and Catholics who have much more structure and have actual bishops that go back all the way to the apostles in this bimodal patriarchy. You got to have a clerical patriarchy, that's set. Got to have a lay patriarchy, that's completely set. Every husband and father is a priest, prophet, king by office. It's just a non-starter of an argument. So I don't know why I said 99%. I was trying to leave that 1% of fudge factor, but it's 100%.
Yeah, I really think it is. I think it's a contradiction in terms. And I also think ultimately that feminism, it's a self-defeating ideology because it leads to a non-reproductive ideology. Christianity does the thing that is so necessary. It leads to a reproductive ideology. And those who reproduce capture the future, even from the evolutionary worldview, right? Natural selection is showing that you can have ideology so bad that you actually naturally select your thousands-year-old genes out of the gene pool, which is insane. Imagine your forebears fought and died in brutal conflict all over the world over every sort of ideology you could ever think of to make sure that their genetics stayed strong and went to the next generation, all the way down to you, where you finally have the pinnacle of life that they wish they had. You have air conditioning, man. You have a vehicle where you can travel what used to take 7 days in 30 minutes, an hour, right? No problem. The pinnacle of the social revolution is kind of here, right? The pinnacle of comfort is here. They select their genes out with it. They took everything they did to get here and just used it to select out their genes. It's the craziest thing on planet. I've never heard of anything more absurd. It's backwards.
It's poetic. It's beautiful. It's like a sonnet in a way. But here's the thing. I think
it's the best proof for God.
It is.
I think it's the best proof for God that there's an inbuilt safeguard
Yeah.
against the ideologies of the Lord's enemies. And that's why he tells you that, in many ways, you don't have to, like, vengeance is mine, like, this is what's being said here, right? Like, ultimately, don't worry about this. I have safeguards built into this.
Yeah.
And yes, you do need to fight the good fight, don't get me wrong, but ultimately the safeguards here are just like, what's 200 years to God? It's nothing. 200 years, these ideologies will be gone because their genes are just wiped out.
Yeah, hell yeah. And it's coming up to 200 years from 1848, the birth time of feminism, the upstate New York Seneca Falls Convention. That's nearly 200 years. Normies have been brainwashed that feminism's like 50 or 60 years old. Your grandparents, people were all feminists. And so I like your 200 figure number. Let me ask you something. I don't want to get you in trouble with any of your pals, Andrew, but there is, I'm cool with, I'll say 100% of the noticing of the problem, the diagnosis of the problem by Red Pill, 100% more right than feminists, not just 90%. I think Mike would agree with that if you're rethinking it. Wall Street Journal be damned. But when it becomes more than a praxeology is when they start saying the same shit that feminists say, which is don't marry, don't reproduce. This is supposed to be a punishment to the opposite sex. Second wave feminists said this bullshit, and it's everything you're talking about here. It's self-defeating. It's the rhetoric of failure. But also when the Red Pill steps out and tries to pretend it has prescriptions more than just this praxeological noticing, which is fine, then it becomes problematic because they immediately, by and large, the ones that pretend to have solutions, they start to say the same stuff, which is essentially population control. Don't marry, don't have kids, don't, all of these don'ts. Where are you on that? As a Christian, I think we're the same on that topic as well, right?
I think that men and women both. So I would break this down in two ways, and then I'll present you with a hypothetical. So the first way I would break it down, when I take a kind of bird's eye view of how the world actually operates, this is what I see as being descriptively true. The world is filled with a bunch of warring tribes and people group, and they're fighting consistently over resources day in, day out, nonstop. And politics is a baseline for taking those now refined resources and distributing them. And that's all that happens. That's what politics really is. When you break it down, it's about the distribution of procured and refined resources to the population, how much treasure goes here and how much treasure goes here, and how much treasure which goes here gets redistributed back here, right? That is politics, essentially. Because the entire world is set up of these warring tribes and nations, and all of it is designed for the procurement of resources for the people group. You, for instance, fight tooth and nail every single day on behalf of your family to procure the maximum amount of resources for their not only survival, but for them to thrive, right? A nation does the exact same thing on behalf of its people. Because of this, though, men are always going to be in the role of not only procuring those resources and refining them, but protecting them. And uniquely, women cannot do that. So if this is the social role of men inside of all societies, and I argue it is, that this is descriptively just always going to be the case, and women think we ought to do that because descriptively we're the ones who can do that, and they're the primary beneficiaries, then I would argue that women have a social duty to reproduce. Now, does that mean every woman can reproduce? Of course not. Does that mean every man can defend the nation or even his own household? Of course not. What it does mean, though, is that we should, as a society, be moving towards a reproductive, healthy society. So women who can't reproduce, that's fine. You don't need to be able to reproduce. Perhaps you're called to something else by God, or perhaps you have no uterus, or perhaps, but you should always be moving socially, society, towards reproduction with everything that you're doing, even if you yourself can't reproduce. That's the social law, and women are failing, miserably failing at the ideas of reproduction. That's why reproduction rate is so low, and the reason is because they defer motherhood for college. And that's part of the propaganda of the state and the West when it came to egalitarianism, and we have to reverse that quickly. The red pill prescriptors Now, to my hypothetical for you, the red pill prescriptor is this. Here's why they say not to get married. It's very hard to argue with this. They say, look, it used to be that men and women, they only had localization, pre-internet, things like this. You grew up where you grew up. Most people got married within about 20 miles of where they grew up with the men and women who were available. And since there's usually a roughly equal distribution of men to women, a few more women than men, but not many, you were basically assured a husband and basically a wife, assured a wife, right? And, it worked out pretty well. Polygamy really wasn't even necessary because monogamy worked out so well because of localization. Now let's flip the script though. What happens when we introduce the internet and we introduce these surgeries, which can enhance female beauty to the extent of absurdity, right? You can literally take a very ugly woman and a tummy tuck, facelift, nose job, boob job, butt job later, right? Have something that resembles a decently looking woman. And all of them begin to compete for men who are in the upper echelon, the idea of hypergamy. What is the answer for that? What is it? Like, what do you do about that?
Do you know what portion of this non-rhetorical, because I don't know, what portion of women partake in, say, 2 or more of those cosmetic surgeries? Because it still would, I would guess, though I don't know, that it's still relatively small, that any given woman does anything more than, I'm most self-conscious about my blank, I'm going to engage in this kind of surgery. But to get to an 8 or a 9, I would say most women have to do 2, 3, 4 of these. Do you have any clue, Andrew?
Cosmetic surgery is overwhelmingly women. The percentage of women who engage, especially in like boob jobs and things like that, is actually fairly high percentage. But that's not the point. Isn't that through cosmetic enhancement, all women can become beautiful? The point is to say even kind of mid women, or what you consider mid women, can now at least get into the competition realm with naturally beautiful women, to where they feel like they're competitors. There's no like truth of the matter that they actually are competitors, but they can at least feel like they're competitors.
Sure. But they'll only feel, I'm just assuming they'll only feel that way if they actually go and get, at the very least 1, 2, 3 of these surgeries, because I think the solution has, or not the solution, but at least the reason this isn't a standard dilemma is because assortative pairing is a biological principle that all mammals adhere to, even some reptiles adhere to assortative pairing. So what we'll tell guys in our matchmaking program is that it's a natural principle that this is at least true for mids and up. You have the most long-term bonding. Tons of biology papers on this. I read around the time we started the matchmaking program. The longest term bonds last the longest, even in nature, even in the lower irrational animals, when they bond for sort of middle of the pack woman with middle of the pack man. And what I'll tell low self-esteem men, because we do this coaching on the side, low self-esteem men that aren't actually bad looking, they're just passive or low libidinal drive or whatever it is, don't go for a woman beneath what you think you are because you have a low self-esteem. Go for one around where you're at, because there's some cosmic principle, call it assortative pairing, where an uglier woman will even a lot of times say no to a date with a guy who asks her out that she thinks is better looking than her. I'm not sure if this holds for manliness simpliciter.
Yeah, so ugly people should go for ugly people. I get it.
Yeah.
Right? It makes sense to me.
Because we pair less attractive people with less attractive people and mids with mids. And yeah.
This logically follows, right? The problem you have in this is that high status men will hump women who are ugly. They just won't stay with them. And oftentimes if they hump a chick who's ugly, right, that chick will now be what they consider to be alpha widowed, or they'll think that they have chances with men who are of that social status in the future.
Sure.
This creates a problem in the competition hierarchy from the internet's perspective that's very difficult to reconcile, because because localization's gone, right? If your choices are much more limited and you only have Bob, Chuck, and Bill, and all the women love Bill, but Bill is taken by the captain of the cheerleading squad pretty early on, and all that's left is Chuck, right? Then you get Chuck. That's it, right? You get Chuck, and that's it. And now it's like an all-you-can-eat buffet, and so it's hard to compensate for this. But there is a solution, I think, through ecclesiastical authority for this, and the idea that is state marriage is what needs to be removed. And I think that you could solve a lot of this problem if you remove marriage from the state and put it back in the hands of the church.
I like a primacy of church marriage. I'm not. Yeah, I don't know. I've been back and forth on state marriage a couple different times, and I don't typically dither. But here's where I think the solution is. I'd have to think about the state marriage a little bit longer. The ultimate, I think I disagree. But I would say this. The solution is the self-governor in women's biological drive to reproduce. Like, even if they're so-called alpha widowed, eventually, once they see that they're not going to be able to pass on their genetic heritage and become wives and moms, they will get off board. I haven't seen the stats on this, but all women, when they're 30, 32, 34, start to give the skanky modern lifestyle at least a second look, which is kind of what's happening increasingly, acceleratingly now. And if the men out there that actually themselves want to get married are realistic about, okay, I'm not going to get, unless I'm like, Hector or whatever, or any of Priam's sons, if I'm not an Adonis, I'm not going to be able to get a virgin 10 who's this much younger than me. If they're serious about assortative pairing, then, which is always a sort of at the back of their minds, even if they're not, even if it's not cognizable or they can't articulate it. I think once both men and women come to terms with, I want to be a mother and a father, and this isn't going to happen by the time I'm 40 if I'm only settling down, I think it sorts itself out. I think it's what you said earlier about sort of, the teleology of the whole system has the last laugh because that's how God designed it. People just men and women need to be realistic about where they are, which is what our number one thing.
Well, I agree with that, but when I think of it, the reason I say this, that this can solve the problem, is because what we're trying to mitigate a few things. The first thing we're trying to mitigate is divorce, right? That's the number one thing we're trying to mitigate for, and the incentives for divorce. All those incentives for divorce come from the state, all of them. And here's how they come through in the state, usually with the various policies which have been passed over the last 30 years, which defaulted instantly the children of a marriage to women, thus destroying the millennial generation, destroyed it. It began to destroy Gen X, but it really destroyed millennials, and Zoomers are just tanked, okay, because of this. This has been primarily the deconstruction of marriage has been the biggest problem with the building blocks of the next generation over any other problem. The mitigation of which can only be done through the enfranchisement of women being able to vote in the political system on these various issues. The politicians come in and then make policy tailored towards women at the expense of men, because it was considered demonized to masculinity to complain about such systems. That's feminine. What ultimately ended up happening is we yielded the power of this over to feminists. Yep. But if the state has its say inside of marriage, it'll always default this way. And here's why it has to. It has to because the state does not want to yield resources. They want somebody else to yield resources to the children. That almost always universally is going to be the man who makes more in the way of resources than the woman. And that's why the default ends up happening this way. And it basically, the distribution will always happen that way if we don't remove that and move into some sort of structure which makes sense. You know what I mean? But this is the way that the state does this.
Yeah, it seems to have post-feminism. I mean, I always go back to a line in the book 3 of the Politics by Aristotle, where he's correcting book 5 in Plato's Republic. Plato was horrible, heinous thinker, actually. Doesn't get enough credit for how shitty an influence on Western culture he is. Jay Dyer does good work on this. Book 5, The Republic, is really nasty. Plato says the children belong to the state, not the father. Aristotle in book 3 of the Politics says, no, the child belongs to the father. This is picked up by Thomas and all of medieval Catholic philosophical tradition. The child always belongs, both at the level of the natural law and at the level of the positive law, to the father. So it should be a cultural and a political precept that the child belongs to the father. And it's the mother sort of bracketed. And of course, none of these societies acknowledged divorce in a widespread way at all. They didn't have it; simply doesn't exist for them. Healthy Western societies, and this got codified in, I think, what is it, paragraph 74 of not Arcanum, but Rerum Novarum. So it's actually officially Catholic teaching. Forget the fact that we don't have divorce and all that. The point is, even if there were to be civil divorce, which there's shit tons now in Western society, the precept always has to be returned to, and I think it will be returned to. The child belongs to the father, and the mother is bracketed. But if you're going to be getting divorces, the lawfare should favor giving the child to the father, because it's just some other precept that's been denied.
I actually agree with this, but it seems that the appeal that you're making there is again to an ecclesiastical authority. You're appealing to an ecclesiology and saying the ecclesiology has the structure here and the mode in which even to enforce these things. And it's like, that's exactly the prescription that I'm saying here, is that an ecclesiastical authority for the dynamic of keeping family structures together is going to be far superior to the state. And so when the red pill posits like, look, it's a bad deal for men to get married in modernity, they're right. Look, they're right. It's a terrible deal for most men to get married in modernity. I get it. The stats don't lie about it. It seems to be a real bad deal for most of them.
An unduly riskier deal. But what's a worse deal is we just went through about 40 passages in scripture last night saying the worst life a man can have is being married to a shrew. Steph was just posting them on my account. Like, but I'm not, that's horrible.
It's better to be marooned in a desert than have a nagging wife, right? Or whatever. It's like, look, I get it. What I'm saying though is like, I understand your argument of, look, it's highly risky, but the consequence of not doing it can be even riskier. I get that.
Well,
what I'm saying though is
riskier. It's genetic death.
We have the patriarchy though, bro. We can just change the system. That's the whole point, right? It's like we don't need to fucking worry about whether or not we're going to mitigate risk or assess risk. You just change the system. That's what the patriarchy does. That's what we're supposed to be doing, right?
I just think I'm being partitive, where I'm like, I think absolutely that's what we need to do. You and I are the patriarchy. We're white Christian males between the age of 30 and 50 or whatever. So let's get together, and we have. This is why we've doubles debated, and it's why I support your channel every chance I have. I'm just being partitive when I say I don't like, and I've never liked saying, well, there's risk, strong risk, undue risk involved by getting married now. So young men don't marry. This is the exact same thing as the 4H or 4F or whatever the thing is. And I would also say this is why, because even though I'm making a kind of ecclesiastical appeal that, the church reflects all this, it reflects what for us is the natural law, the law etched into nature and etched into human nature. It's all like a sortative pairing. I don't believe in that. When I go in for my matchmaking company, I make a match. This guy's a 4, get a 4 female. I'm not saying that because the Pope told me to. I'm saying it because nature is wired teleologically and ergonomically, where
the Orthodox have a
best together. That's above ecclesiology.
Well, the Orthodox have a similar ideal in teleology, where we'll say the truth is written on our heart. But we're referencing something akin to what you're calling natural law, though it's not the direct belief in like the ontology can itself give you the ought, right? But rather that the truth which is written on your heart is giving you this ought. But I understand exactly what you're saying. Don't even disagree with the idea of purpose and telos, because that's part of the Christian ethic. I guess what I'm saying here is, like, from your view and mine, I don't care about state marriage. It doesn't mean anything to me. If people in the Catholic Church get married by the Catholic Church, they're married. That's it. Whether the state says they're married or doesn't say they're married, or the state says it's illegal or doesn't say it's illegal, they're married. That's the authority in which governs marriage, right? This not the state. The state has allowed for marriage to become perverse. The state allows homosexuals to get married. The state allows for for trans to get married. The state will consistently allow for there to be perversion and perverseness in marriage and the destruction of the family unit. This is the case. I don't know why we can't appeal to the ecclesiastical authority instead to govern marriage itself like it traditionally did. The state should reinforce the ideals of the church on this, not the church, the ideals of the state.
Yeah, no, I would have never at any integer of my development or semi-dithering on this issue, which I ironically in law school, I was having lunch with D. Roy Murdoch, gay black dude who was making a kind of similar argument, but from a gay black dude's perspective.
So weird.
And so I've gone through it all, and I definitely don't disagree with any of what you've said there. It's just, the fact of the matter is, if the state's going to recognize a bunch of perversity, you can't explicate a false logoi. And if they're trying to explicate and shore up false logoi and saying, hey, these two chocolate donuts here
are married,
and that's not a gay, that's a gay joke. That's not a black joke. Just because
now look, all the jelly, now the jelly filled donuts can get married to the cream filled donuts. What kind of madness is this world?
Traitor.
Yeah, it used to be fritters with fritters only. Everybody knows that, right?
By the way, that was such an odd lunch.
That was an odd lunch. Yeah, you were there. Yeah, we did not have lunch alone without my wife there. Yeah, that was an odd lunch with D-Roy.
So I got to ask you a question, Tim. I know that this has to be the case with you and Steph, as it is with me and Rachel, but I don't know if many people may not know it, but if you've been married long enough, your wife can begin to read your mind.
Absolutely.
With very shrewd skill. However, they do have failings. Like my wife right now did not read my mind that I needed more coffee. And so now I have to ask. So that's a major L for Rachel today. Major L's in chat for Rachel. I can't believe it.
Yeah.
I was even sending the psychic thoughts out. You know what I mean?
I know.
And nothing. It's dude, look at this.
ETF, Rachel.
Look, this is ridiculous. Look.
No, it's remarkable how much the reading of the mind does really work, and finishing of the sentences. I was gonna try to start explaining this after, we've been married. It'll be 20 years this summer, and we were friends for like 4 years before we got married. Two of them were dating, but two of them were in the same friend group. I was gonna try to start explaining this in my recent interview with Nick Fuentes, because he's a cool dude. We were having a good conversation. Most of it was spent on intersexuality. And we're agreeing about women basically are the worst and probably the biggest problem in society now. No, and I got Nick, who's a very nice dude, to say, yeah, this is as big a problem as the other thing I talk about a lot, the J question. I was like, yes. So, but I was going to start going down the path of explaining how this psychic modeling works, where the wives just start when you have a really good woman, the way you do or I do, they just start finishing your sentences. They start knowing when the coffee is filled. They get like a spidey sense, and it tingles, but it's not consistent with the refilling of the beverage impulse. So
it's the phenomenon is an anticipation of needs phenomenon. So good wife, she anticipates needs over X amount of time. She can begin to know what your needs are before you even do, even if new needs arise. This is just part of the knowledge, the intimate knowledge of knowing somebody so well. You do the same exact things, and so do I, even unwittingly. For instance, perhaps I'm leaving on a trip. I leave an extra couple $100 perhaps in the wife's drawer in the morning, along with some other things, and trying to anticipate her needs, right? And things like this. I know for sure you're going to Walmart. Don't lie. I know you're going to Walmart for something. Something will come up. You forgot the fucking bread. Something will come up. You're going to need it. There it is, right? It's the anticipation of needs. And so after a while, you become so intricately and intimately familiar with the other person that does almost seem like it's a psychic connection. Though, of course, it's not. It's just that you understand the person so intricately that you can anticipate almost every desire they have after a while.
Amen. Andrew, yeah, this is the 1,000%. And by the way, of all the Catholic chicks, ethos that we have to deal with online,
I have to deal with
all the Christian. Yeah, I know you do. But the one that's like kind of the Steph's less online than Rachel, but the one online chick that Steph ever is like, okay, that's my Eastern Orthodox twin, is in terms of the things, her natural responses to 99% of things is Rachel. So, they will go, oh yeah, she wanted to say something.
Say Rachel's my home skillet. I love Rachel.
Yeah, no, I'm
always on her side. Don't even try to get me off Rachel's side. I'm on Rachel's side no matter what. never off her side. And Rachel also will be kind of aggressively anti-feminist, whereas the other chicks that are now sort of coming out, hopping on the bandwagon against feminism, are still fighting on the back foot. And that's just one thing that when Steph did have a Twitter account, or when she'll jump on a stream with me, that's one thing she has in common with me or with you. And so does Rachel. I guess the four of us fighting feminism on the front foot. So, and you did this to effect on Friday afternoon's Piers Morgan. I have to play this clip that you, Babe Ruth, called your own shot. You said, hey, fatty or whatever, Dunkin' Donuts lady, this clip's going to go viral, and all anyone's going to remember is that I told you to have another donut. So we can have some donuts on Holy Monday and on. And it did.
It did.
So fuck that lady.
That's right. Well, here's the thing. This chick,
yeah.
So here's some irony for this whole situation. The chick I was debating with, I recognized her only so I didn't know who was going to be on the show. I never do. They never tell me, and I don't care, right? I'm like, let's just go into a rumble. I don't give a shit, right? They had kind of almost presented it as it was going to be more of an interview than anything, but I always assume everything is a trap, and so therefore I've always walked out of the minefield without getting my legs blown off, right? I just always assume it. So I was ready, and I was in debate mode, and I had stats, figures, everything ready to rock and roll. I didn't care who was there, but I did recognize her. I just didn't know from where. And I knew that she was a TERF feminist right from the gate. And then I remembered I had stumbled across one of her articles a couple of years ago, and I didn't even remember where that was, of her basically making some case for like feminist lesbianism or something like this. And I was laughing and called her retarded. And that's basically, the last I thought about it. So, but I do remember thinking even at the time, man, I'd love to debate with this chick one day. And there we were. So I might as well, right, make the most out of a good situation.
But you did. Lo and behold, you did, Andrew.
It was one of the greatest things ever.
we were psyched up. But not everyone that watches this channel has seen it. So we're gonna play it right now. If you can spare a minute, 56 seconds.
I have it. I have stuff for you.
Yeah.
All right, here it is. It's phenomenal.
I mean, do you know how insecure and pathetic you sound? You can't take you seriously.
Eat another donut, lady.
I'll just finish. I get that you reckon that you're some big and I know you're desperately trying to be relevant, but you sound so insecure and so pathetic. You are
Do you have
irrelevant.
an argument? Can you put the Dunkin' down for a second and give me an argument? Do you have an argument? Or is it
Sorry, I haven't heard one from you.
Yes, I've given you multiple arguments for the social fabric of all of society and how we can improve it, what we need to be doing, what we need to be moving towards. I gave you all the stats. I gave you argument after argument. Can you give me a single argument?
All the stats. You are.
She didn't know what to say.
You know all about the universe and what's going to progress.
Can you pause it real fast? She's literally going into, oh, you're so smart. She didn't know what the fuck to say.
No, she has no idea.
Like, you gave me everything. What do I say? I'm on whatever this is, national TV, whatever Piers Morgan show is now. That's a deer in the headlights moment. That was your Jordan B. Peterson moment from back when he was marginally cool against that Canadian feminist broad. That was good because she's literally going into, oh, you're so smart, big, strong man.
They all become a deer in the headlights. So the thing is, there's a meme, not all memes are true, but some memes are so true that they can be used as arguments, right? One such meme is the Schrodinger's feminist meme. The Schrodinger's feminist meme, I'm sure you're aware and your audience is aware, just states this, that women are badass, empowered boss babes or the ultimate helpless victim, depending on which one helps them the most in the moment. Okay. And this is all feminists, essentially. And what you always see on all of these panels, and the reason people find them fascinating, is they get to see that transformation in real time. They all start as, well, as a powerful executive woman inside of the world of men and being able to have policy. And then you kick their ass in the debate in 5 seconds. And then suddenly they turn into helpless victims immediately.
Yeah.
And it's a fascinating kind of bird's eye view into why that meme itself was not only created, but why it's so true, right? I'm totally empowered. I'm here on this show. I'm ready to tangle up with the men. Oh, I can't believe you said that. Oh, it's just like, it's laughable. By the way, this is the third time on Piers there's been a group of feminists where I made this exact argument and just said, do you have an argument back? And all they can do is say, you're mean and you smoke. That's it. That's all they can say. That's it. You're mean and you smoke.
You're smoking as you're mean. You literally sit there and smoke and be mean to them. It's beautiful. No, they cry out as they strike you. I'm not trying to make a whole thing of it, but it is very feminine. It is very hoo-hoo-ish, very Jewish, to be like, I'm going to be tough until the second that I get subjugated and I get thrown under. And then it's this Nietzschean dissimulative force associated with that group of people. Now all of a sudden now the oughts come out. Well, you ought not to be mean to me. And
they're always going to tell you what a real man is, right? So I hear this every single panel.
I want to talk.
You don't act how a real man acts, and I always say the same thing, right? Do you have kids? No. Well, then you ain't acting how a real woman's supposed to act.
Amen.
Right? It's simple.
The real men means you take untold amounts of shit from little twerps, aka women. That's what they say a real man is. A real man would take this shit off of me. It's like, sweetheart, the world has turned, baby.
Yeah.
Look. Yeah. And they also go for two things. You've pointed this out before. I'm getting this, I think, directly from you, but also my own observations. You're an insecure man if you just talk like an alpha. Talk how a man talks. See the world as a man sees it. You're insecure. Or B, you have, for some reason, a tiny penis just for talking how a man talks. They'll always go to one of those two.
Or you're gay.
Oh, I forgot you're gay. Yeah.
Those are the three forms. It's always the same. And it always has to do with your penis. It has to do with you aren't good enough to stick your penis in me, or you're not good enough to stick your penis in somebody else, or you need to stick your penis in a man. But it's always the same thing. It's always the idea of social capital is based around whether or not you can have sex with a lot of women, which is just insanely fun. It's just like, it's super hilarious to me.
All the trifurcation of the penis envy and penis insults is giving whole new meaning to these donuts. I don't even want to begin to explore. But let's play the rest of that. It's true. It's always one of those three.
Always.
Because they have nothing else.
They have nothing else. Nothing else.
It's not psychic ability.
You're just pathetic.
You're pathetic.
Nobody's going to listen to you. You're an aggressive, insecure man.
I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. This is going to go
seriously.
Well, this is going to go viral.
Boom, calling you shot.
Take me seriously, and all they're going to remember is that I told you that you couldn't put down the Dunkin' Donuts long enough to make an argument.
The man called a shot.
Look at her face. She's so pissed.
Real man doesn't speak down to a woman the way you do. You're actually
care, lady.
A real man
you're a very feminine man.
Nobody cares what you think real men are. Yeah.
And how are you? You think that you're such a big boy by slating, bringing in personal.
You're so mad.
I feel for you when you go out into the big wide world.
I love it so much.
That was
so good.
Expertly done. But here, I want to talk about a few things. We'll play a game. Just from that minute 56 seconds, I want to pull a few things and just have you respond to them. One, Andrew, they call you a shock jock. Now, shock jock means saying absurd things for outrage relevancy, obviously. You're saying, and I do the same thing, and I've written a book on it, painfully obvious things for, I guess, that the greater health of society, but I guess also relevancy. How are you a shock jock? You're literally saying women are small and weak and dependent and beautiful, and Christianity got this right all along. How is that shocking?
Well, yeah, I say this often. Not only am I not a shock jock, but I don't even think I have controversial takes. I don't even think that they're controversial. I think that what I am, the problem that has happened is the idea of the normal person, the normal man especially, has been relegated into this ideal of like stupid knuckle dragging idiot dummy doesn't know anything. You know what I mean? This kind of thing. The truth is that normal men, regular Joes, average guys, go to work every day. They're not nearly as stupid as these elitists think they are. And it turns out the elitists don't have very good arguments for anything because they're inside of echo chambers. What's shocking to them actually is when normal, regular people tell them to go themselves and that they're stupid and they don't know what they're talking about, and then demonstrate it in front of thousands of people. That is what is shocking to them, not the things that I'm actually saying, because if they were really shocking and absurd and stupid, you could refute them.
That's right. That's right. They'd be easily refuted. And it's a clown world besides. I mean, because we have this gatekeeping system, I do subscribe now to a more Jay Dyer, powers imposed from the top down rather than grassroots political movements, the way we're kind of brought up to believe. In the procedural due process of the PSYOP, you end up believing in the substance of the PSYOP. Once you realize it's all top-down stuff, feminism was very top-down. The Rockefellers admit this.
Oh, man.
Then you get, okay, so that's how they created the clown world. They created the clown world where, yeah, there's always an emperor's new clothes, sort of counterintuitivity of the mob, but it always requires a power source. You know, the emperor himself has to be enforcing it, or else truth will out, as the Brits say. And truth will out even then. It just takes a few generations longer. And the world has turned on feminists and feminism, and they're not getting why. That even though they had the muscle in their favor, men ceding the power to women, men are no longer going to step aside. Is this why the world is turning on feminism, in a word?
Well, kind of. I think I have a slightly different take. I think the libertarians destroyed the right. More than any other group, it was libertarians who did this, and here's why. Not because I don't like, even though I don't like their ideology, right? Christianity, if there was, let's say, the libertarian utopia, Christians could live in it. Sure, in their covenant communities, this and that, we would be able to have our own communities, this type of thing. It actually sounds pretty good. The problem is this, and I liken it this way. Let's pretend that there was a sword which had all political power set in stone. There was a progressive, a Christian conservative, and a libertarian. And all of them were looking at this sword. The conservative Christian says, look, I think it's best for us to wield power because we have moral oughts for society and we're going to create a healthy social order. The libertarian says, look, that's fine, but that sort of power is very corrupting. And so what we need to do is have some sort of way in which to check all of that corrupting power that could happen inside of your Christian ethic by having a more live and let live policy, but within your community, that's fine. And the Christian conservative says, actually, that's a really good idea. And then they both turn around. The liberal has the sword and has already cut you in half. He's butchered you. He's buried your body. He walks off laughing because you're stupid. It's a game of power. And libertarians destroyed the idea that the Christian right can have power in lieu. We had to yield it all to secularists. That's stupid. And it's always been stupid. And it's within those cracks, those foundational cracks from Enlightenment principles and libertarianism, in which women were able to seize this sort of power to begin with in any sort of political domain, away from any idea of logic, reason, or rationality. And it's like, screw that. And what's happened is not just that people have turned on feminism, they've turned on libertarianism because they see now that ultimately with men, it comes down to power dynamics. Christians recognize that. We have prescriptions for mitigation of that as well. That's what our virtues are for. Humility, right? Things like that. Humility, the higher ethos to the family. God is the ultimate authority, not you. We already have these mitigators. We don't need your stupid, like watered down libertarian pill for this. We already have it built in to the system itself. We Christians can and should seize power politically inside of democracies. Why wouldn't we? That's insane not to.
Yep. It's what hell yeah. Just to get that out there. It's what the 4 cardinal virtues are for. Literally, justice is giving to each his due, meaning even if you can take more, it's not the pirate's world where you take what you can, give nothing back. Justice, prudence, both of these are at different times called by St. Thomas the ruler's virtue, the man's virtue. Justice,
temperance, chastity, yes.
Don't take more, and particularly with taste and touch, than is good for you. Golden rule. And then, of course, the fortitude to do all 3 of these other things. So they're all male. They're all male specific virtues, and they're called, at times the ruler's virtue because we're supposed to fucking rule.
That's right. That's right. So the idea, exactly. Look, you're totally right. And the idea here is like, look, because of the social dynamic shifting where conservatives went, no, this is stupid. We do need power, and we need it bad because even if there's a corrupting element to it, if you give it and cede it to the other side, they will destroy you. And they have. Right. They destroyed everything. We're trying to unravel it now, and it's slow, and the process is painful. Right. But feminism is becoming unraveled with it because men are like, no, they just say no. And here's the truth that nobody wants to confront. If men universally decide that women have no rights, they don't. And if men decide universally that men have no rights, they don't. And that's the truth of the world. And it's a really hard pill to swallow, but that's the fact of the matter. And feminism, unfortunately, it drives such a sex divide that what ends up happening if men do go, oh, you like all those right? Bye. It's done. There's no recourse. And in many ways, the Christian right is trying to save feminism and women from themselves.
Yep. Dude, anytime there's a woman, quote unquote, wielding power, it's always optics, and it's always some man out there that's holding the power together for her, like Kristi Noem. She was holding the gun right in some soldier's face, and he looks like a cuck. And everyone, like normie conservatives, are out there like, oh, she's dressed skanky, and that makes our Western polity hard to take seriously. No, what makes our Western polity hard to take seriously, bro, is that any woman's in power, which is death in a polity, which is tyranny in a polity. Women are not built to be in charge. It's not how she's dressed that makes us look like silly little cucks. It's the fact that she is anywhere in power.
Well, it's funny too, because, well, I'll give you an ultimate irony too. I argue that women actually had more political say and more political enfranchisement pre-women voting anyway. I can give you the primary example of this. Women passed the 18th Amendment. Now, I don't know if you can count, right? But 18 is a lower number than 19. And the 19th Amendment was their ability to vote, right? So they got an amendment passed before they could even vote. And why? Because they had a moral high ground. Yep. They were not part of the political caste. They weren't able to be conscripted. They weren't able to go into debt. They were able to be scholars in their own right. And they were part of a moral high ground for women's issues, which were important, and they could influence the husband in the home without there being a divided vote. And man, that was a lot more power. That was a lot more power centralized where it should be than they even could dream of having right now individually.
Well, influence is virtual power, and they had that in droves. Now they have this sort of fake power, but their influence is gone because all these cucked husbands out in the suburbs, 99% of these are very, very feminist homes out in the burbs, as you know. And the husbands will cede to the wife's quote unquote power, pseudo power, whatever it is, just because they're cowards and they don't want to take the power back. At which point, if they decided to do, by the way, they could do like that, more like a week or 2 weeks. But they will tell you
1 hour.
They're 1 hour.
Yeah, 1 hour.
They will never cede to their wife's influence. That's what all the golfing, whatever it is, 54 holes of golf every weekend is. Every weekend is a separate trip for the couples. Steph and I I'm not coming down on people, but we don't do stuff apart. If I'm doing something fun, I want to be doing it with Steph because she's nice. She's sweet. She makes it funner. We like to do the same shit. Like, I don't want to go out with the guys, and my wife does have an influence on me, but she has zero power over me. And that's precisely what you're talking about when you're talking about what prefigured the 19th Amendment.
And by the way, that sort of influence is good. We need matrons.
Yes.
We need matrons in society to lead the next generation of women. And we need smart women to be reproducing who are homeschooling our children.
Hell
And
yeah.
I love the idea that they're getting helped across the street and their groceries are getting carried for them. And that virtuous women have a spot in society, which virtuous men are doing everything in their power to protect that. Right? That's a fantastic ideal to strive for. The problem is the perversion of the idea of political enfranchisement being a thing which actually empowers women when it does the exact opposite. It destroys the central idea of what women's authority was over especially women's issues. Their influence has been completely eroded, and they're nothing more now than political debt cogs to this matrix-like machine. And that's that.
That's it. That's all it is. And I know I'm backing everything up here today with like a papal quote, and you're a brother in Christ, but not a brother in Rome. Here's Pius X, base Pius X. It's a mistake to maintain that women's rights are the same as man's. Women in war or parliament are outside their proper sphere, and their position there would be the desperation and ruin of society. Women created as man's companion must so remain, always under his power. Here's here's Benedict 15. You'll like this one. With religion's decline, going to the ecclesiological point you're making, cultured women have lost their sense of shame along with their piety. Many, in order to take up tasks ill-befitting their sex, took to imitating men. That's the gender dysphoria point. Feminism is the ultimate gender dysphoria. Others abandoned the duties of wives for which they were formed to be cast in the current of life. Here's Pius XI. Wifely work outside the home is the debasing of the womanly character and the dignity of motherhood of the whole family, as a result of which the husband suffers the loss of his wife, the kids of their mother, and the home and family of an ever watchful guardian. This false liberty, which is all it is, and false power, the way you or I would argue, an unnatural equality, meaning it's not real, with the husband is to the detriment of the woman herself. This is the point I was looking for. For if the woman descends from her regal throne in the Christian home, she will soon be reduced to the old state of slavery and become, as among the pagans, a mere instrument of man. I mean,
which is exactly what has happened. Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, if you go back and you read, and I've made this argument many times, if you read the anti-suffragette arguments, which you'll find in my wife's amazing book, right? If you read the anti-suffragette arguments, they read like prophecies now. That's what they don't even read like arguments now. They read like prophecies, as each one of these arguments has come to fruition. And it wasn't very long, was it? It was within 40 years that they really started to, and within 70 it was done within just a couple of generations. Now, here's the thing, though. If you can be that perverse to destroy in 70 years, then goodness should be able to reclaim it within the same time frame. You can pervert the perverted system, right?
Yeah.
For the purpose of changing it to the system that it should be. Now, he's completely right. And remember, I'm not Jay Dyer, right? I don't have so much of a theological hardline. I don't debate with Catholics all the time on theological dogma differences and things like this. I have a large Catholic audience, and I have a large Protestant audience, because even in the Orthodox tradition, it is stated that you still know truth. Truth is written on your heart. You know truth regardless of if you're in what I would consider to be the true Church of Christ. You still know truth. Yep. And I still need you, the person who does know truth, to be doing what you can to push towards that in society. What's funny is, reclaim that, the rest of this shit sorts itself out anyway, right? The rest of this stuff sorts itself out anyway.
Amen. The funny thing was, when I was getting ready for our interview, I had to go get these fake Dunkin' Donuts. We don't actually have a Dunkin' in town. These ones here, we're going to print out like a Fugazi Dunkin' Donuts sign, put on the box. This is Shipley. What a fraud I am. What a fraud am I? But I was driving with my 14-year-old daughter, who's just like Steph, who hates feminists, who watches and listens to our content, sometimes yours. We were listening to the minute 56-second clip, and she goes, I get it. What these fat feminists are saying, she always calls them fat feminists. What these fat feminists are saying is that equality means I can insult you, but you can't insult me. Yeah. That's what Maggie said. Listening to Andrew toast these biatches.
Well, I always try inside of debates to match energy, and I actually see it. Even though I've been criticized heavily for it, especially on the Christian right, you're mean, or you swear, or you said a horrible thing here, or whatever. It's actually a de-escalation technique. You got to think of it in the terms of a bully. Well, I don't know about you, but anytime I've ever dealt with somebody who has tried to push me around and they get a good punch right in the mouth for doing it, they tend to stop trying to do it.
100.
It's actually a de-escalation technique when people say, try to throw jabs at you and you ignore them. They actually will continue to throw jabs. However, if they throw jabs at you and then they take one right back, it often de-escalates and moves it back to the ideas, because you're not winning anything now, right? The person is more than willing to throw your ass right down in the mud and fight you there or fight you here. Now it's up to you to choose.
And then, so I get a lot of this guff too, this flack, blowback from my Catholic audience, and I have a lot of Protestants in my audience as well. They'll say, "What, why do you talk tough? Why do you come back at people? Why do you have such an aggressive posture in these debates?" There's a lot of re-listens to my 6-year-old debate with Trent Horn on feminism from 2019 because of what was going on with Trent and Laura Horn the last couple of weeks vis-a-vis Fuentes. So a lot of classics listens to that debate, and people are like, "Man, you debate tough." And a lot of people now like it because people like the Wilsons and the Gordons and others out there, and some of the descriptive modeling of the red pill have begun to preponderate a bit. But for 5 years, Andrew, I've taken so much shit for tone matching and for punching back in the mouth. The exact stuff you're just describing in both debates and in just contestant kind of one-on-one dialogues, even if they're not formal debates. I do exactly what you're doing because I was a white serious basketball player, basketball phenom, whatever you want to call it, in my earlier life. And I learned it's not true. This narrative, feminist Christian, feminist Catholic narrative that, like, if they slip in a jab, just ignore it, they'll stop. That's bullshit. They'll slip in more. You're encouraging them. If someone makes a joke about the most talented guy on the court out of 10 is a white basketball player, but we're going to say, "What's up?" They'd call me the European player at the time, Peja Stojakovic or something. You got to give it right back. And then it proves, like you said, that it's not an open way, that they can't win.
Well, and often I want to let you know that I believe that a lot of those criticisms come from the fact of the idea of the comfort of women being something which is ingrained inside of many men's minds. And so here's how the criticism works. Now, I know the truth. The truth is that if I took a bunch of shit off these women, they would go on their Twitters and this and that and be like, "Ha, he's just getting walked all over by women." You know what I mean? Bob, ha, 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 ha. And that would actually devalue the message way more than if you hit back and say, "No, screw that. You're out of line. And here's why." Right. But the truth is like, no matter what you did in this situation, those critics would criticize you as not being holy enough, not being Christ-like enough, because it's not really about that. It's about the fact that you won. That's what they're pissed about. The fact that you won, they didn't want you to win. And so what they do is they come at you from this angle of trying to criticize you through religiosity and piousness. It's not even coming from a place of correction. It's coming from a place of trying to beat you down in and of itself. Now, I'll give you another thing here on this, which is if you look at prisons themselves, guards are far outnumbered, in regards to prisoners. Prisoners can essentially at any time basically overthrow a prison establishment whenever they want to, if they unify to do it. And they have done it successfully in the past. Guards practice a system called verbal judo, right? And verbal judo is an idea of how to de-escalate situations so that you don't end up in these kind of problematic things where, okay, you're at the mercy of these prisoners. And if you're really causing them a lot of problems, you tend to get a shiv in the back, right? In the area where the cameras aren't. And part of verbal judo is showing respect. That's true, right? Even to murderers and thieves and this and that. But it's also not taking any shit. And part of verbal judo is when people try to test you, they try to test your limits in prison, right? The guard can brook no bullshit on that, right?
Right.
You're going to do this and that's that. But as long as you are doing that, you ain't going to get no problems from me, right? That's kind of like their social contract. And it works really, really well. Why do they think inside these spheres this is any different, right? This is a dog-eat-dog world. right? Where you're trying to push a narrative against an established thought process, which is designed to tear down Christianity. Be nice doesn't even work. It doesn't even work.
No.
And it's never worked. And
Nope.
these people weren't very nice when they were seizing power, were they? And niceness is not going to seize it back. And the idea that that we can't engage, so that we can use de-escalating techniques, even if they seem mean, even though they work, is, you're right. It's about power. They just want to have power over how you think and what you're talking about.
All the world is will to power and nothing besides. I'm not a BAP fag. That's from the Will to Power notebooks by Nietzsche. I'm not a BAP fag, but that is true. And of course, there's more to the world in terms of invisibles and intangibles, and Christianity gets it right. But in this world, this online world, the world of ideas, the hurly-burly of feminism, the original subversive anti-Christianityism, all the world is the will to power and nothing besides. And the first rule of feminism, this is why, Andrew, the first rule of feminism is that never, for any reason, at any time, may you insult a woman or say anything negative about a woman. You have to find a man that's responsible for it. You call it, what about the men, though? Which is funny.
Yeah, what about
the
men,
reason
though?
that this is the first rule, not only ontologically of feminism, but also chronologically, sequentially, is because once you have some smoking, cool-looking, meanie guy with a beard, a woman can't grow a beard, and he's just sitting there taking on 3 chicks, and he's like, "Go eat some more Dunkin', fat ass." And then you're showing, look, and it's the same thing you said. You're like, I brought you numbers, I brought you a priori arguments, I brought you a few a posteriori arguments. You just sat there with your flat top and your fat face, and you look like a dipshit. Everyone is like, that dude's cool. Like, it doesn't even the non-fat Jewish blonde chick that's sitting there is like, that guy's cool. And once that plank, that chink out of the armor falls out, you can fell that dragon. And that's why they have to have it, not only ontologically, but chronologically. If you have women being fair game for making fun of when they say silly shit, which you love one of the great women. I love one of the great women too of this generation. There aren't that many. We just admitted that, but they still say silly shit, right? So I mean, Steph's here. You guys say silly shit all the time, right? Steph?
Yeah, but I mean, but hang on, wait. I feel like now we're competing. Mine's better than yours, Tim. Mine's better than yours. Mine's better than yours, Tim. There's a little. Are we doing some competition now, Tim?
All the world is will to power, and nothing besides.
Will to power. That's right.
When neither of us are bad.
Love you, Steph. I'm joking, Steph.
Oh, no. Good joke. I love.
No, when they also, to go back to the real man thing, when a woman opens her mouth and she says, "Let me tell you about a real man," this is where every guy gets, even if they're not in the room, they could be on the opposite side of the globe. They grab their head and they're like, I feel a little headache, because it is the ultimate in being lectured by a non-expert. And so there's that dimension to it. But there's
can I give you the sound? I actually know the sound. There's a sound which collectively, you can hear it if you listen closely, because so many men make this sound at once. You can hear it whispered on the wind when one of these conversations happens, because that's how many are doing it. It sounds like this. Oh,
yeah. Oh, brother. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's
and
like
you can hear it. You have to listen.
Yeah, you can. If
you have to go out to your balcony, you have to go out to your deck. You have to listen. But if it's the right day and the wind is in the right, you can hear that collective sound. It will touch your ears.
It will when the wind is in the west.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
No, but I feel like what I would before we got the fuck out of California, and we would still go to things like all the various aquaria. The aquariums which populate California, or SeaWorld. What I started noticing, we'd take our littler kids there just because it's something.
That's where that chick came from.
Yeah, they let her out of the tank.
That's where several of them came from.
Yeah, blackfish, a dangerous, deadly whale or whatever.
Dunkin' fish.
But yeah, an all Dunkin' diet.
Yeah, all Dunkin'
you
diet.
can look this beautiful on an all Dunkin' diet. Plus, your hair only grows into that flat top, the fat top.
But can you imagine cutting your hair like that on purpose?
What?
Like, how do you cut your hair like that on purpose? You think she goes in and she sits down and she's like, "Every lesbian everywhere, please."
Yeah. Yeah.
And the chick's like, oh, okay, yeah, I can do that.
If you were to go in there and be like, give me a bob, like the Jennifer Aniston from 1997, it would throw the hair cutter for such a loop, because they'd be like, this doesn't check out. You need the flat top. Now, ontologically, that's all you're allowed to possess.
Can you give me a flyboy haircut from 1941, please?
Right.
That'd be great. It's like every lesbian ever, please.
Yeah.
It's like it's the goes or the Gozerian.
Goes are good, the Gozerian. Yeah.
They go in and they're like, just give me the goes or the Gozerian.
Aim for the flat top. Yeah. Yeah. No, all I was going to say about SeaWorld, besides all of these fat lesbians that you've had to debate on Piers Morgan, is that I just started being like, okay, if you tell me one more time that I need to be nice to some stupid fish, then I'm just going to, if we're going through, the descriptive becomes the prescriptive, then I'm just going to start telling all of you, by the way, you're all going to hell. Are you shacked up with your girlfriend before marriage? Are you having premarital sex? Are you using contraception? I know a couple of these SeaWorld employees are gay, right? If we're just doing that now, or we're going prescriptive on each other, then I've got a lot to say as the Christian guy in the crowd. You know what I mean? So when they're like, here's what a real man is, how are we supposed to not be like, well, here's what a woman is? You gotta shave off some weight. You gotta grow your hair out. You gotta have a bunch of babies. You gotta,
or how about you just say like, oh yeah, real women shut the fuck up. That would be pretty good, right? You just fire back with that. Oh yeah, well here's what a real woman does. They shut their mouths. So you want to start with that?
Shut up.
Shut up.
You don't know how many times that appears in the Old Testament, the Book of Sirach. Do you guys have the Book of Sirach? I think we have basically the same Bible.
We have we're not missing any books you have. We have some extra books you don't have.
I think you only have one. You're 74, right? And we're 73 books.
76.
Oh, you're 76.
76.
Yeah, the Protestants have like whatever.
I mean, don't quote me on that, but I want to say it's 76.
I knew you had 1, 2, maybe 3 extra. But yes, you have Sirach too. I mean, it says women need to STFU like what, a dozen times. I'm not joking. Steph tweeted them all out.
That alone, and other places in Scripture too. It's not just Sirach. It's all over the Old Testament.
Yeah, it's and then St. Paul also was famous. Corinthians, 1 Corinthians, women need to STFU. Direct quote, end quote. You know what I mean about that though? The SeaWorld, or just the general kind of 90s libertarian, no one should ever impose an ought on the world, the left would say. And then they'd be like, you guys are really mean to all of these fish. These fish deserve a good life. And it's just like at a certain point that washes over. And everyone's like, you know what? I'm a Christian guy. We're going to take power again. That's the theme of this interview, isn't it?
I think that the idea is it's pretty simple, right? Normal men don't have to put up with a bunch of bullshit from insufferable henpecking bitches. And they don't have to put up with any shit from insufferable simps either. And it's perfectly acceptable, right? You have been fed a load of garbage that you're stupid, that you can't argue, that your rational thinking, because you may not be able to articulate it the best way because you're busy on a Friday night in a snowstorm trying to fix your brakes so you can get to work tomorrow, and you have your last $100 in your pocket, that you're somehow lesser and an idiot and a moron, and you have no place in which to step in on these authoritative, highly pedigreed women or highly pedigreed intellectuals and say your piece. But here, I'm going to tell you what the actual truth is. The truth is that most of these guys who are doing that are actually smarter than the men who rule us. And you find out very quickly as you get into the higher echelons. I'm going to tell you something which is an ultimate irony. Debating the lower tier debaters on YouTube and this and that who are not popular, much more skilled and informed on the issues than the people who have millions upon millions of followers and make millions of dollars as political commentators, because that was all marketing. Not because they're actually good at what they do. Debates, for me, as I've gone up in the ranks, have gotten easier, not harder. Yeah. And that should tell you that if one guy from the Midwest can begin the process of challenging an entire established ideology with his wife, right? With his wife, that tells you how weak it really is. It tells you how weak it really is and how all of you have a part to play in this, in fighting that good fight, because they're not only not better than you, but you can probably intellectually just mangle these people if you ever have the opportunity to.
It's quite a white pill. That's beautiful. And that's really correct. I would just say this last question. We were talking a little bit before we clicked whatever button you click to go live. I don't even know because my wife does it all. But whatever it is, we were talking about the loneliness of live streaming culture and politics. It's kind of lonely, and you and Rachel are some of our only friends, and we have a few good ones. But why is it so lonely to say true things at the beginning? It's getting less lonely. More people are throwing their name in the hat, however that goes. But it's quite lonely to say very obvious things when you're beginning to overturn the new ancien regime of feminism.
Well, I think the class of men who get put in leadership positions, I've always been very cautious about having a cult of personality. And I've always been very cautious about raising people's expectation. I'm not going to ever run for political office. That's not my role. The Crucible operates as a kind of a special forces, you could say. We get behind enemy lines and we enable other great men to get in there and absolutely destroy ideologies who are in a better position to do it. What we do is we go behind enemy lines and sabotage, right? We break the trucks and we bend the bolts on the rifles, and we dilute the gasoline, and we cut the bridges, and we do everything we can to enable other men to rise far above us so that they can continue to put the sword where it goes, who are in positions to do that, positions I won't be in. And I relish that shit. That's what I do best, and that's what I'm always going to do best, and that's what we do. Now, we're never going to be the fellers of giants. But what we can be is a perpetual rock in the shoe, a plague, always causing discomfort to the enemy everywhere that they are, right? Just enough to always keep them somewhat on the back foot, just enough to always at least keep them irritated as other men who are in better positions than me can do something about this and are trying to. And guess what? Eventually they will. And I can say, hey, look, maybe I wasn't the giant feller. Maybe I wasn't the person who brought down Goliath here. But man, I definitely took out one of his hamstrings, right? And made it possible for others to get in there. And that's all I'm looking to do. And I think that's enough. Like, that's enough. That's already a giant task. It's a giant task for the Crucible. But it's one that we relish.
There's some line, I think it's Yeats, like the powerful play goes on and I have a verse or something like that. That's what you're saying as a giant feller. No, a non-giant feller, but you're a great feller.
Great feller. Yeah.
Yeah. Great old feller.
We're not going to be able to, to drop the establishment to its knees. Some great man somewhere will, right? But we can definitely say that, man, we were the perpetual rock in the boot, and we were the perpetual architects of discomfort for the enemy's ideology. And that was already a monumental enough task. And we're thus far accomplishing it. And I'm very, very proud of the entire Crucible crew, because there are men much wiser than I who are inside of the audience, which I have been able to put together. And there are men who are much finer at detailed argumentation and philosophy than I who are in my audience. And they are great people who are beginning to come together to say, screw this. And if I can, while I'm working my job in some way, just a small, tiny way, agitate and irritate the enemy, then I'm doing my job, right? Then I'm doing my job correctly. And I've done something to contribute towards the great and noble cause of the deconstruction of feminist ideology and progressive ideology.
Yes, well, that's all I can say to that. But amen. 3 cheers for it. Andrew, thank you for running the Crucible. Thanks for always doing good work. Thanks for going on Piers and telling these donut eaters precisely what they are.
Happy to do it, man. Happy to do it. And I'm sure that there will be many more appearances. I think Piers secretly thinks I'm hilarious. And he's right. He's right.
Yeah.
But the thing is I do enjoy political discourse on all sorts of different platforms, and that will continue. And the Crucible will continue to wage its private war against TikTok and Twitter and the lunatics who are there via invasions. And we will continue to do exactly what we do best, which is get behind enemy lines and cut bridges, ropes, pop tires, and just genuinely or generally make their lives as miserable as possible. That's what we do.
It's a bit of all right. Well, God bless you, man. You always be assured of our prayers. And we've sent over a screener of What a Woman Is, right? Yeah, we sent you. Okay. All right.
Yep. I haven't had an opportunity to sit down and watch everything yet, but I will.
I'm waiting on an announcement, a potential announcement on that thing, and we're sick of it. So pray for us and our movie. And we talk to you and Rachel a lot behind the scenes. Give her Steph's best regards and mine as well. And God bless.
Well, hang on. One last thing. I just wanted to say thank you for having me on the broadcast. I really appreciate it. And it was very kind of you. And I wanted to thank you and your wife for your various kindnesses to the Wilsons over the years, especially when she was sick. I actually did a stream you may not know about yesterday, I think it was yesterday or the day before, where I was going over. There's only 2 people in the apologetic space that I have a hard time saying no to. Jay Dyer, right? And I said, surprisingly, the second one is a Catholic named Tim Gordon. I was like, but if Tim Gordon reached out for a favor, I don't even think it would be possible for me to say no. And it's through the various acts of kindness where you didn't think you would get anything in return whatsoever, just being kind to the Wilsons. So the Wilsons wanted to thank you for that, man.
Oh, thank you, brother. Yeah, that's what it's all about. Oh, we're talking about what it's all about in the public space, but in the private space, realm of integrity, friendship, these are the kingly things. And that's what Steph and I really care about. Like I said, it's lonely doing what we do. People don't understand it quite, because it looks like a really good job. It looks more glamorous to be able to do this from home, but it's lonely. And I was a social butterfly, I was telling you, but friends, family, yeah. Once you start saying the things we're saying very publicly, a lot of them are out on you. They skedaddle, and we really appreciate all of you and Rachel's honest to goodness friendship and loyalty throughout the years too. So this is getting very sentimental, but it's a good.
I think a little sentimental end is the right end for this stream. So
a couple of mouthy dudes. Yeah,
that's right. You have yourself a wonderful day, man. Thank you so much for having me on your program. You're only going to be able to exclusively watch this interview here. We will link it over in our community tab in the Crucible, though, so that we can drive as much traffic as we can. Mr. Gordon, you have a wonderful day, sir.
You too, Mr. Wilson. God bless. Peace.